The sun cast long shadows across the empty street as Cassandra Collins stepped off the dusty stagecoach into Redemption Creek, Montana Territory, 1875. With trembling hands, she clutched the letter that had brought her thousands of miles from Boston to this frontier town, a desperate plea from her dying uncle to come claim his small ranch. The townsfolk stared openly at her fine Eastern clothing and delicate parasol, their whispers carrying clearly in the still afternoon air. "Another city girl who won't last a month," muttered a woman in a faded calico dress. "Bet she'll be on the next stage east," chuckled her companion. Cassandra lifted her chin and straightened her spine, just as her finishing school instructors had taught her. 22 years of proper upbringing wouldn't be undone by a few unkind words. She had nowhere else to go, not since her parents' deaths had left her penniless and at the mercy of relatives who made it clear she was unwelcome. The stagecoach driver tossed down her trunk, raising a cloud of dust that settled on her navy traveling dress. "Miss Collins, this here's Redemption Creek. End of the line for you." "Thank you," she replied, trying to keep the quaver from her voice. "Could you direct me to the Painted Rock Ranch?" The driver scratched his beard. "That'd be old Jasper Collins' place. Heard he passed on last month. 5 miles northwest, just past Cottonwood Creek." He pointed vaguely toward the distant hills. Cassandra's heart sank. 5 miles with her trunk and valise seemed impossible. As she stood pondering her predicament, a deep voice called out from behind her. "You'd be Jasper's niece, then?" She turned to find a tall man atop a chestnut mare. The setting sun silhouetted his broad shoulders and the distinctive shape of a cowboy hat. As he dismounted, she took in his weathered appearance, worn leather chaps over denim trousers, a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up revealing tanned forearms, and a face that had seen its share of sun and wind. He couldn't have been more than 30, with eyes as blue as a summer sky and a strong jaw shadowed with stubble. "Yes," she answered, relieved someone knew of her. "Cassandra Collins. And you are?" "Zachary Parker." He touched the brim of his hat. "Folks call me Zach. I worked your uncle's ranch these past 5 years." His eyes assessed her city clothes and delicate appearance with obvious doubt. "He mentioned you might be coming, though most didn't believe it." "Well, I'm here now," she said, summoning what little courage remained after the long journey. "And I intend to honor my uncle's wishes and take over his ranch." A chorus of laughter erupted from the nearby saloon, where several men had gathered on the porch to watch the exchange. One called out, "Parker, you gonna tell her, or should we? City girl like that won't last a week out here." Zach's jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes on Cassandra. "Don't mind them. Let me help you with your things. My wagon's just down at the mercantile." As he lifted her trunk with ease, Cassandra noticed the townsfolk watching them with unconcealed curiosity and judgment. A woman passing by with a basket of laundry shook her head. Poor Jasper must be turning in his grave, leaving his place to a tenderfoot who'll ruin it sure as sunrise. Zach loaded her trunk into his wagon, then offered his hand to help her up to the seat. His palm was rough with calluses, his grip strong and steady. "They don't mean harm," he said quietly. "Folks out here are just set in their ways. They've seen plenty of Easterners come and go, and they think I'll be just another failure," Cassandra concluded, smoothing her skirts as she settled beside him. Zach clicked to the horses, and the wagon lurched forward. "What matters is what you think, Miss Collins." The wagon rattled down the main street, past the curious stares of the townspeople. Cassandra sat rigid beside Zach, her gloved hands folded in her lap. "Tell me about my uncle's ranch, Mr. Parker." The letter I received was rather sparse on details. Zach glanced at her, his expression unreadable in the fading light. Painted Rock's a modest spread. 160 acres, small herd of cattle, couple horses, some chickens. Cabin's solid, though Jasper built it himself. He was a good man, your uncle. Kept to himself mostly, but fair to those who worked for him. Did he have many employees? Just me full-time, and occasionally hired hands during roundup or branding. Cassandra processed this information. "So you've been managing everything since his passing?" Zach nodded. "Seemed the right thing to do until you arrived or sold up." The wagon hit a rut, jostling them together momentarily. Cassandra clutched the seat to steady herself. "I'm grateful, Mr. Parker. Truly, I don't know what I would have done otherwise." As they left town behind, the vastness of the Montana landscape opened before them. Rolling hills stretched to the horizon, painted in purples and golds by the setting sun. The beauty took Cassandra's breath away, so different from Boston's crowded streets and buildings. "It's magnificent," she whispered. Zach's expression softened slightly. "That it is. That's why folks who belong here never leave." "And how does one come to belong?" she asked, meeting his gaze directly. He studied her for a moment before answering. "By loving the land more than it breaks you, I reckon." They traveled in silence after that. The only sounds the creak of the wagon wheels and the steady plod of the horse's hooves. Cassandra's mind raced with questions and doubts. She had never ranched, never lived outside a city, never done manual labor. Her skills were in watercolor painting, piano playing, and making polite conversation, none of which would help her survive here. As twilight deepened into night, a small cabin came into view, lamplight glowing in its windows. A figure emerged onto the porch, holding a lantern high. "That's Martha Jenkins," Zach explained. "Neighbor from the next valley over. I sent word you were coming today." The wagon pulled up to the cabin, and Cassandra got her first look at what was now her home. It was small but sturdy, with a covered porch and chimney. A barn stood nearby, and fenced corrals stretched behind it. It was humble, but somehow dignified in its simplicity. Martha Jenkins hurried down the steps, a stout woman in her 50s with graying hair tucked under a kerchief. "Well, praise be you've arrived. I've got supper waiting, and the place all tidied up." She looked Cassandra up and down. "Though Lord knows, it's not what you're used to, I expect." "Thank you for your kindness, Mrs. Jenkins," Cassandra replied, allowing Zach to help her down from the wagon. Her legs wobbled after the long journey. "It's just Martha, dear. We don't stand on ceremony out here." Martha took her arm. "Come along inside before you fall over. You look dead on your feet." The cabin's interior was simple but clean. A large main room served as kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace at one end. 2 doors presumably led to bedrooms. The furniture was handmade but solid, a pine table with 4 chairs, a rocking chair by the fire, shelves lined with books that surprised Cassandra. "Your uncle was quite the reader," Martha explained, following her gaze. "Educated man, was Jasper. Came west for the adventure, but brought his learning with him." Cassandra felt a pang of regret that she'd never known her uncle. Her father had rarely spoken of his older brother, hinting at some long-ago disagreement. Martha bustled about, serving a hearty stew with fresh bread. Zach declined an invitation to stay, saying he needed to return to his own cabin on the property. "I'll be by at first light," he told Cassandra. "There's much to see and decide." After he left, Martha helped Cassandra unpack essentials and prepared the bedroom that had been her uncle's. "It's proper now for you," Martha assured her. Fresh linens and all his personal things stored away. When Cassandra finally collapsed into bed that night, exhaustion overcame her anxiety. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was wondering what Zach Parker truly thought of her chances here. Morning arrived with startling brightness. Cassandra woke to roosters crowing and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, she didn't recognize her surroundings, then memory flooded back. She was in Montana, hundreds of miles from anything familiar, in a ranch she now owned, but had no idea how to run. She dressed hastily in the plainest of her dresses, of brown cotton that still looked woefully out of place. Martha had already prepared breakfast and was feeding chickens outside when Cassandra emerged. "There you are? Thought you might sleep till noon after that journey. Zach's in the barn checking on a new calf. Said to tell you he'd be up shortly." Cassandra ate quickly, then stepped outside to survey her inheritance in the morning light. The ranch sat in a small valley, with hills rising gently on 3 sides. A creek meandered nearby, lined with cottonwoods. In the distance, cattle grazed on slopes dotted with sagebrush. It was beautiful in a rugged, untamed way that made her heart ache with something she couldn't name. She was still standing there when Zach approached from the barn. Without his hat, she could see his hair was the color of burnished copper, falling in waves that he pushed back with one hand. "Morning, Miss Collins. Sleep well." "As well as could be expected," she answered honestly. "Everything is so quiet here. No carriages, no street vendors, no neighbors arguing through open windows." A smile briefly transformed his serious face. "You'll get used to it. Or go mad from the silence. One or the other." "I prefer to think I'll adapt," she said firmly. "That's the spirit." ready for the grand tour of your kingdom. The grand tour proved both enlightening and overwhelming. The barn housed 2 workhorses, a milk cow, and the new calf. Chicken coops, a smokehouse, tool shed, and workshop completed the immediate buildings. Zach showed her the vegetable garden Martha had been tending, the fruit trees her uncle had planted, and the spring house where dairy and other perishables were kept cool. Then they rode in the wagon to view the pastures. 50 head of cattle represented the ranch's main income. Your uncle was building the herd slowly but surely, Zach explained. Quality over quantity was his way. By midday, Cassandra's head was spinning with information water rights, grazing rotation, predator concerns, fence maintenance, and 100 other details of ranch life she'd never considered. It's too much, she finally admitted as they stopped for a lunch Martha had packed. I don't know the first thing about any of this. Zach regarded her thoughtfully as they sat in the shade of a large cottonwood. No one's born knowing it. Even those raised to it have to learn. But everyone expects me to fail, she said, voicing the fear that had been growing since her arrival. Most do, he acknowledged. This isn't an easy life for anyone, let alone a city girl, she finished for him. A useless ornament who can't tell a bull from a steer. He had the grace to look somewhat abashed. I wasn't going to put it quite that way. But you were thinking it. She sighed, looking out over the land that was now hers. Perhaps they're right. Perhaps I should sell and return east. Is that what you want? The question caught her off guard. Was it what she wanted? She had nothing to return to, no home, no family who truly wanted her. No, she admitted. But wanting to stay doesn't mean I can succeed. Zach was quiet for a long moment. Your uncle believed you had something in you. Said you were the only Collins with any backbone besides himself. Surprised, she looked at him. He said that? But he hardly knew me. He kept track of you through letters from back east. Had a picture of you as a little girl he kept by his bed. Zach's eyes held hers. Said you wrote to him once when you were 16. Your father had forbidden it, but you did it anyway. Cassandra remembered. It had been an act of defiance after discovering her father had been hiding her uncle's letters for years. He wrote back the kindest letter. Said I was welcome anytime. Tears stung her eyes. I always meant to visit, but there never seemed to be the right moment, and then my parents died, and everything fell apart. Life has a way of taking unexpected turns, Zach said softly. The question is, what will you do now that you're here? She wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. Learn. Work. Prove them wrong. A smile tugged at his lips. That's a start. The next weeks proved more challenging than Cassandra could have imagined. She rose before dawn each day, working alongside Zach and occasionally Martha to learn the rhythms of ranch life. Her hands blistered and then calloused. Her skin tanned despite her best efforts with bonnets and gloves. Her elegant dresses were soon replaced by practical skirts and blouses. Martha helped her sew. Most evenings found her too exhausted to do more than eat a simple dinner before collapsing into bed. But slowly, incrementally, she began to understand the land and its demands. She learned to milk the cow, gather eggs without being pecked, and tend the vegetable garden. She mastered the art of cooking over a wood stove and washing clothes in a copper tub. Zach proved to be a patient teacher in most things, though he flatly refused to let her help with the cattle. One step at a time, Miss Collins, he'd say whenever she pressed the issue. You might as well call me Cassandra, she told him after the first month. Miss Collins sounds like someone expecting tea in a parlor, not someone shoveling manure from a chicken coop. That earned her one of his rare, full smiles, transforming his weathered face and making her heart skip unexpectedly. Cassandra, then. And I suppose you should call me Zach, like everyone else. Their relationship remained strictly professional, though Cassandra found herself increasingly aware of his strength as he chopped wood or mended fences, his gentleness with animals, his quiet competence in all things. Sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher before he quickly looked away. The townsfolk remained skeptical of her presence. On her first visit to Redemption Creek for supplies, the stares and whispers followed her everywhere. The general store owner, Mr. Wilkins, was polite but cool as he filled her order. Surprised to see you still at it, Miss Collins, he commented as he measured out flour. Most city folks don't take to ranch life. I'm not most city folks, Mr. Wilkins, she replied evenly. So it seems. He hesitated, then added more kindly. Your uncle was well respected around here. kept to himself mostly, but always fair in his dealings. I'm glad to hear it. I hope to continue his legacy. Mr. Wilkins looked doubtful, but said nothing more. At the post office, she overheard two women discussing her openly. She's got Parker helping her, but even he can't make a rancher out of a porcelain doll, one said. Mark my words, she'll be gone by winter, replied the other. Those delicate hands weren't made for real work. Cassandra walked past them, head high, though the words stung. Her hands were no longer delicate, they were chapped and work-roughened now, badges of her efforts that she was secretly proud of. Only at church did she feel truly unwelcome. The small white building on the edge of town served as the community's gathering place each Sunday. On her first visit, Cassandra sat alone in the back pew. No one greeted her or sat nearby, though many stared and whispered. The sermon that day had been about perseverance through trials, which seemed fitting. Afterward, as she prepared to leave, the pastor's wife approached a thin woman with pinched features. Miss Collins, isn't it? I'm Mrs. Harmon. We're pleased you could join us today. Her tone suggested the opposite. Thank you, Mrs. Harmon. It's a lovely church. Yes. Well, we're a close community here. Very traditional. Very established families. She smiled thinly. I understand you're attempting to run Jasper's ranch yourself? Most unusual for a woman alone. I'm not entirely alone. I have Mr. Parker's assistance. Mrs. Harmon's eyebrows rose. Indeed? Living out there with just a single man for company? How progressive of you. The implication was clear, and Cassandra felt her cheeks burn. Mr. Parker has his own cabin on the property, Mrs. Harmon, and Mrs. Jenkins visits regularly. I see. Well, good day, Miss Collins. Mrs. Harmon turned away to greet others more warmly. Zach was waiting with the wagon outside. One look at Cassandra's face told him the encounter hadn't gone well. Church folk giving you trouble? He asked as he helped her up to the seat. Nothing I can't handle, she replied, though her voice wavered slightly. Mrs. Harmon seemed concerned about the propriety of our working arrangement. Zach's jaw tightened as he climbed up beside her. Small minds with nothing better to worry about. It doesn't bother you? What they think? He shrugged. Been the subject of talk before. Won't be the last time. What do you mean? He clicked to the horses before answering. Not from around here originally. Came west after the war, had some trouble settling back into regular life. People talk about what they don't understand. It was more than he'd ever shared about himself, and Cassandra sensed there was much more to the story. You fought in the war? He nodded. Union cavalry. For long years. That explained much about him, the watchfulness, the occasional distant look in his eyes, the nightmares she sometimes heard from his cabin when her window was open on warm nights. I'm sorry, she said softly. That must have been terrible. Was a long time ago now. His tone made it clear the subject was closed. They rode in silence for a while, the church and town falling behind them. Finally, Cassandra spoke. Do you think I'm a fool for staying? For trying to make this work? Zach considered before answering. I think you're braver than most. Stubborn too, which you'll need. But not foolish. He glanced at her, something warming in his blue eyes. No, Cassandra. Not foolish. Summer faded into autumn, bringing cattle round up the busiest time of year. Zach hired 3 additional hands for the work, rough men who initially looked at Cassandra with the same skepticism as the townsfolk. Boss lady wants to help with the gather? One asked incredulously when she announced her intention to ride along. Miss Collins owns this ranch, Zach said firmly. She's learning every aspect of it. The man shrugged. Your funeral when she falls off and breaks that pretty neck. Cassandra had been taking riding lessons from Zach, graduating from the gentle mare to a more spirited gelding. She wasn't an accomplished horsewoman yet, but she could stay in the saddle and follow basic commands. The first day of roundup tested her skills and endurance beyond anything she'd experienced. Hours in the saddle left her muscles screaming in protest. Dust coated her throat and clothes. The noise and controlled chaos of cattle being gathered overwhelmed her senses. By evening, as they made camp, she could barely dismount without assistance. One of the hands snickered as Zach helped her down. City girl's about done in, I reckon. Cassandra straightened, ignoring her protesting muscles. I'll be ready to ride again at dawn, Mr. Jenkins. Will you? The man looked startled, then offered a grudging nod of respect. Zach's lips twitched with what might have been a suppressed smile. That night, Sitting by the campfire after a simple meal of beans and biscuits, Cassandra found herself studying Zach in the flickering light. The flames highlighted the angles of his face, the tiny lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his hair curled slightly at his collar. Something warm unfurled in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire's heat. One of the hands played a harmonica softly, a melancholy tune that suited the vast darkness surrounding their small circle of light. The cattle lowed occasionally from the makeshift corral, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack. "Penny for your thoughts," Zach said quietly, settling beside her with a cup of coffee. "I was thinking how different this is from everything I knew before," she admitted. "In Boston, I never saw stars like this, never felt so small against the landscape. Does it frighten you?" She considered the question. It did at first. Now it's becoming home. His eyes met hers, serious in the firelight. "Be careful saying things like that. People might start to believe you mean to stay." "I do mean to stay, Zach. This is my home now." Something shifted in his expression, a softening, a moment of vulnerability quickly masked. "We should turn in. Early start tomorrow." The remainder of the roundup passed in a blur of dust, cattle, and exhaustion. By the final day, Cassandra had earned, if not the respect, at least the acknowledgement of the hired hands. She had stayed the course, never complained, and even learned to help with some of the less technical aspects of the work. When the last steer was sorted and the buyers had paid for the cattle they selected, Cassandra felt a surge of pride unlike anything she'd experienced before. This was tangible work with tangible results, money that would see the ranch through winter, cattle kept for breeding that would ensure next year's income. "We did it," she said to Zach as they watched the cattle drive depart toward the railroad. "You did it," he corrected. "It's your ranch, your decisions that made it happen. With your help." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind. "Will you stay on, Zach? Through winter and beyond?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Planning that far ahead now? I need to know if I'll have to find someone else. Learn to manage alone." His eyes searched hers. "Is that what you want? To manage alone?" "No," she admitted softly. "But I will if I must." "You won't have to." His voice was equally soft. "I'll stay as long as you need me." Something unspoken passed between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings neither was ready to name. Cassandra looked away first, her heart racing. "Good," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We have much to do before winter." Preparing for the Montana winter occupied every waking moment through October and November. Hay had to be stored, buildings repaired, food preserved, firewood chopped and stacked. Cassandra worked alongside Zach from dawn until dusk, determined to prove herself equal to the challenge. The first snow fell in early December, transforming the landscape overnight. Cassandra woke to a world of white, pristine, beautiful, and daunting. The familiar view from her window was rendered new and strange, the distances between buildings suddenly seeming longer. Bundled in the warmest clothes she owned, she made her way to the barn to help with morning chores. Zach was already there, feeding the horses. "It's magnificent," she breathed, still awed by the transformation. "And dangerous," he cautioned. "Winter out here isn't like in the city. Storm comes up, you can get lost between the house and barn. Then I'll be extra careful." She picked up a pitchfork to help with the hay. "Will we still go to town for supplies today?" Zach nodded. "Better now than later. Sky's clear, but that can change fast this time of year." The trip to Redemption Creek took longer than usual, with snow slowing the wagon. The town looked different too, more welcoming somehow, with smoke curling from chimneys and holiday greenery decorating some of the businesses. As they loaded supplies at the general store, Mr. Wilkins was noticeably warmer toward Cassandra. "Heard your roundup went well, Miss Collins. Good price for your steers, too." "Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. We were fortunate. Luck's only part of it. Heard you rode out with the men every day." There was newfound respect in his voice. "I'm learning," she said simply. "Well, you're doing better than most expected," he admitted. "Including me, if I'm being honest." As they finished their business and prepared to leave town, Martha Jenkins intercepted them outside the store. "Cassandra." "Zach, I was hoping to catch you. The church is having its Christmas social this Sunday evening. You both should come." Cassandra hesitated, remembering her previous reception. "I'm not sure we'd be welcome, Martha." The older woman waved dismissively. Nonsense. It's Christmas. Even Mrs. Harmon can't be disagreeable at Christmas. Besides, she added with a twinkle in her eye, folks are starting to come around. Word gets around about how you've taken to ranch life. Zach looked uncomfortable at the invitation. I don't generally attend such gatherings. All the more reason you should, Martha insisted. Both of you, dressed in your Sunday best. 6 o'clock. I won't take no for an answer. After she bustled away, Cassandra glanced at Zach. We don't have to go if you'd rather not. He adjusted his hat, not meeting her eyes. Might be good for you, to be seen in town socially. And you? He shrugged. I'll escort you if you want to go. The idea of appearing in public with Zach not as employer and employee, but as something else sent a flutter through Cassandra's stomach. I'd like that. Sunday evening arrived clear and cold, stars brilliant in the early darkness. Cassandra dressed carefully in her best remaining dress from Boston, a deep green wool with velvet trim that suddenly seemed fussy compared to her everyday clothes. She'd lost weight from the physical work, and the dress hung slightly loose at her waist. When she emerged from the cabin, Zach was waiting with the wagon. He'd clearly made an effort as well, his usual work clothes replaced by clean dark trousers, a white shirt, and a black vest. His copper hair was neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. You look beautiful, he said simply, helping her into the wagon. The compliment warmed her more than her heavy cloak. Thank you. You look quite handsome yourself. The church was transformed with evergreen boughs, red ribbons, and candles in every window. As they entered, conversation momentarily paused, heads turning to observe their arrival. Cassandra felt Zach tense beside her. Martha bustled over immediately. You came? Wonderful. Come in, there's punch and plenty of food. Some people greeted them warmly, others with reserve. Mrs. Harmon's smile was tight as she welcomed them, her eyes moving pointedly between Cassandra and Zach as if looking for evidence of impropriety. The evening progressed with carol singing, scripture readings, and abundant food. Cassandra found herself gradually relaxing as more people engaged her in genuine conversation. Several of the ranchers' wives asked about her garden plans for spring. Mr. Wilkins introduced his daughter, a friendly young woman who taught at the small schoolhouse. Throughout it all, Zach remained a steady presence at her side, though she noticed his discomfort in the crowded room. He spoke when addressed, but otherwise kept silent, his eyes occasionally scanning exits and windows in a habit she suspected dated from his war years. When Pastor Harmon invited everyone to join hands for a closing prayer, Cassandra found herself standing between Martha and Zach. Without hesitation, Zach took her hand in his. His palm was warm and calloused against hers, his grip gentle but secure. The prayer began, but Cassandra barely heard the words. All her awareness was centered on the simple connection of her hand in Zach's, the way his thumb absently brushed across her knuckles. When she dared a glance at his profile, his eyes were closed in reverence, his expression peaceful for once. She became aware of murmurs and stares from across the circle. Mrs. Harmon and several other women were watching them, exchanging meaningful looks. The simple act of holding hands during prayer had somehow become a statement, a declaration that flew in the face of the town's expectations. When the prayer ended, Zach didn't immediately release her hand. Instead, he turned to face her, still holding it between them. Ready to head home? He asked, his voice pitched low for her ears alone. The word home, in his mouth, referring to their shared place in the world, filled her with unexpected joy. Yes, she answered. Let's go home. As they said their goodbyes, Cassandra noticed the changed attitudes. Some people smiled knowingly, others frowned in disapproval, but all regarded them as a unit rather than separate individuals. By taking her hand in church, Zach had made a public statement, whether he intended to or not. The ride home was quiet, the night air crisp with cold. Stars blazed overhead in patterns Cassandra was learning to recognize. She sat close to Zach for warmth, a woolen blanket wrapped around them both. They'll be talking about us now, she finally said, breaking the comfortable silence. They were already talking, he replied, his breath visible in the cold air. At least now they'll talk about something real. Her heart quickened. And what is real, Zach? He guided the horses around a snowdrift before answering. That I care what happens to you. That I'll stand by you against their judgment. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was more than he'd ever expressed before. Cassandra weighed her next words carefully. I care what happens to you two. More than I expected to. He glanced at her, his face half shadowed in the moonlight. This isn't the life you were raised for, Cassandra. You deserve fine things, ease and comfort. I've had those things, she said quietly. They didn't make me happy. And this does? Hard work and isolation? Calluses and sunburn? Yes. The certainty in her voice surprised even her. Because here I'm not ornamental. I'm necessary. What I do matters. They reached the ranch, the building's dark silhouettes against the snow. Zach helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist. They stood facing each other in the starlight, breath mingling in the space between them. You matter, he said softly. To the ranch. To. He hesitated, then finished, to me. Before she could respond, he stepped back. I'll see to the horses. Good night, Cassandra. Good night, Zach, she whispered, watching him lead the wagon toward the barn. That night, lying in her bed listening to the winter wind, Cassandra acknowledged the truth she'd been avoiding for months. She had fallen in love with Zachary Parker, his strength and gentleness, his quiet competence, his hidden depths. But loving him complicated everything. He was her employee, her teacher in this new life. If she spoke her feelings and he didn't return them, how could they continue working together? Christmas approached, bringing a week of stormy weather that kept them largely confined to the ranch. Cassandra used the time to prepare small gifts, knitted mittens for Martha, who had taught her the skill, and for Zach, a new journal she'd ordered from the mercantile months ago. His current one was nearly full. She'd occasionally glimpsed him writing in it late at night by the fire, though he always closed it when she appeared. On Christmas Eve, Martha joined them for dinner, bringing her famous apple pie and holiday cheer. They ate by firelight and candlelight, sharing stories and laughter. For the first time since her parents' death, Cassandra felt the warmth of family, makeshift though it was. After Martha left, promising to return for Christmas dinner the next day, Cassandra and Zach sat by the fire. Outside, snow fell steadily, blanketing the world in hushed white. I have something for you, she said, retrieving the carefully wrapped journal from its hiding place. For Christmas. Zach looked surprised. You didn't need to get me anything. I wanted to. She handed him the package. It's not much, but... He unwrapped it carefully, his expression softening as he ran his fingers over the leather cover. It's perfect, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Thank you. I noticed yours was getting full, she explained. I hope it's not presumptuous. No. He reached into his pocket. I have something for you too. Was going to wait until tomorrow, but... He extended his hand, offering a small object wrapped in a handkerchief. Cassandra unwrapped it to find a delicately carved wooden rose, small enough to fit in her palm, detailed with remarkable precision. Zach, it's beautiful. Did you make this? He nodded, a hint of color rising in his face. Worked on it evenings. Used to carve to pass time during the war. Haven't done much since, but... He shrugged, embarrassed by her obvious admiration. I'll treasure it, she said softly, running her finger over the intricate petals. I've never received anything so meaningful. Their eyes met across the small space between them, the air suddenly charged with unspoken feelings. Zach leaned forward slightly, then caught himself and stood abruptly. Getting late, he said, his voice strained. Storm's picking up. I should check the animals once more before turning in. Of course. Cassandra clutched the wooden rose, watching him don his coat and hat. Merry Christmas, Zach. He paused at the door, looking back at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Merry Christmas, Cassandra. After he left, she sat by the dying fire, the carved rose in her hands, wondering if she had imagined the moment that almost happened between them. Christmas Day dawned bright and clear, the storm having passed in the night. Fresh snow sparkled in the morning sun, transforming the landscape into a dazzling white expanse. Cassandra woke early, eager to begin preparations for dinner with Martha and Zach. As she stepped onto the porch for firewood, the beauty of the morning caught her breath. The air was still and cold, smoke rising straight from the chimney of Zach's cabin. In that moment, the rightness of her decision to stay struck her with full force. This was where she belonged, not despite the challenges, but because of them. The day passed in pleasant activity, cooking, tidying, arranging small decorations Martha had brought. When Zach arrived to help with chores, there was a new ease between them, as if the exchange of gifts had shifted something fundamental in their relationship. Martha arrived mid-afternoon, bearing more food and small gifts. They shared a perfect Christmas dinner: roast chicken, potatoes, winter vegetables from the root cellar, and Martha's famous pies. Afterward, they sat by the fire, content in each other's company. When Martha prepared to leave at dusk, she hugged Cassandra tightly. "You've done your uncle proud, my dear," she whispered. "And found your place here, I think." "I have," Cassandra agreed, surprised to feel tears pricking her eyes. "Thanks in no small part to you and Zach." Martha's eyes twinkled as she glanced between them. Some things are meant to be, despite what folks might say. With that cryptic statement, she departed, Zach escorting her to her wagon. When he returned, brushing snow from his coat, the cabin seemed suddenly smaller, more intimate without Martha's bustling presence. Cassandra busied herself clearing the last of the dishes, aware of Zach adding wood to the fire, his movements deliberate and familiar. "Best Christmas I can remember," he said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. "For me as well." She finished her task and turned to face him. "Thank you, Zach, for everything you've done since I arrived. I couldn't have managed without you. You're stronger than you know, Cassandra. You'd have found a way." She shook her head. "Perhaps eventually, but having you here made all the difference." He moved closer, his expression serious in the firelight. "There's something I need to say, something I've been avoiding." Her heart quickened. "Yes. I can't continue as your foreman." The words fell between them like stones. "What? What?" Shock and hurt flooded through her. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as signaling inner turmoil. "Because my feelings for you have changed. Are changing. It's not right to remain in your employment when—" He trailed off, looking away. Understanding dawned slowly. "When you have feelings that go beyond employer and employee," she finished for him. His eyes returned to hers, wary but determined. "Yes." Relief and joy surged through her. "And if I told you those feelings are returned? That I've been struggling with the same concern?" Disbelief crossed his features, followed by cautious hope. "Are they?" "Yes, Zach." Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I've fallen in love with you. I didn't plan to, didn't expect to, but there it is." He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, taking her hands in his. "I've never met anyone like you, Cassandra Collins. Your courage, your determination, your heart. I started falling the day you stepped off that stagecoach and faced down the whole town with your chin up. Even though you thought I wouldn't last a month," she teased gently. "Especially then. I wanted to be proven wrong." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I love you. Have for months now. Then why did you pull away last night? And so many times before?" He sighed. "Because I have nothing to offer you. No money, no property of my own. Just a past full of ghosts and nightmares. You deserve better." "No," she said firmly. "I deserve to choose my own happiness." "And that's you, Zachary Parker. Not what you own or where you've been, but who you are." He released her hands only to frame her face gently between his palms. "Are you sure? Really sure? Because once I kiss you, I don't think I can go back to pretending." Her answer was to rise on tiptoe and press her lips to his. The kiss began tentatively, a question being asked and answered, then deepened as his arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. Her hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the solid strength of him as he held her, as if she were precious beyond measure. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "So where does this leave us?" "In love," she answered simply. "The rest we'll figure out together." Winter deepened, bringing short days and long nights that Cassandra and Zach now spent together. Their courtship progressed with the same deliberate care they gave to all aspects of ranch life, thoughtfully, honestly, with deep respect for each other. They agreed to keep their changed relationship private from the town for the time being, though Martha guessed immediately when she visited after New Year's. "About time," was all she said, her eyes twinkling as she observed them working together, the new awareness between them obvious to her knowing gaze. February brought the worst blizzard in years, howling winds driving snow into drifts taller than a man. For 3 days, they were completely isolated, venturing out only to care for the animals in the barn. Zach moved temporarily into the cabin's small second bedroom, unwilling to risk the journey to his own cabin in such dangerous conditions. Those days of enforced closeness deepened their bond. They talked for hours by firelight, Cassandra sharing stories of her childhood and the painful years after her parents' deaths, Zach gradually opening up about his war experiences and the restless wandering that followed before he found peace working Jasper's land. "I never expected to stay in one place again," he admitted one night as they sat before the fire, her head resting on his shoulder. "Kept thinking the memories would catch up to me if I stopped moving." "And did they?" she asked softly. "Yes, but differently than I feared. Having purpose, working the land had helped. And then you arrived." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "You gave me a new reason to stay." When the storm finally broke, the landscape was transformed, familiar landmarks buried, new contours sculpted by wind and snow. Together they dug paths to the barn and outbuildings, checked fences where visible, and assessed their supplies. They had prepared well. The ranch would weather the winter intact. As February gave way to March, signs of spring began to appear: longer days, occasional thaws, the first birdsong. With the improved weather came increased visits to town for supplies and the inevitable confrontation with public opinion. Their first Sunday in church together after the big storm created a stir. Though they didn't hold hands this time, their changed relationship was evident in 100 small ways: the glances they exchanged, how they sat close together, the protective way Zach positioned himself beside her. After the service, as they prepared to leave, Pastor Harmon approached them. "Miss Collins, Mr. Parker. A word, if you please." They followed him to his office, where Mrs. Harmon waited, her expression severe. Cassandra felt Zach tense beside her, prepared for disapproval. "It has come to our attention," the pastor began, "that your living arrangement has evolved since Christmas." "With all due respect, Pastor," Zach replied evenly, "our arrangement remains entirely proper." "Be that as it may," Mrs. Harmon interjected, "appearances matter in a community such as ours. A single woman and man working and living in such proximity, clearly forming an attachment." She left the implication hanging. Cassandra straightened her spine. "My reputation is my concern, Mrs. Harmon, and Mr. Parker has been nothing but honorable." "Your uncle was a respected member of this community," Pastor Harmon said. "We would hate to see his name and yours tarnished by scandal." Zach's jaw tightened. "There is no scandal unless people choose to create one through gossip." "Nevertheless," Mrs. Harmon pressed, "steps should be taken to ensure propriety." "What exactly are you suggesting?" Cassandra asked, though she already suspected. Pastor Harmon cleared his throat. "Either Mr. Parker should seek employment elsewhere, or if your attachment is genuine, the situation should be formalized through marriage." A charged silence followed his words. Cassandra felt her cheeks flush with both embarrassment and indignation at being cornered this way. "I believe that decision is ours alone to make," she said finally, "when we're ready." "Of course," Pastor Harmon conceded. "But please understand the position of the church. We must uphold certain standards." As they left the church, Zach was unnaturally quiet, his expression closed. They had ridden to town on horseback rather than taking the wagon, and they mounted in silence. Only when they were well away from town did he speak. "I'm sorry you had to endure that," he said, guiding his horse alongside hers. "It's not your fault, isn't it?" "If I hadn't fallen in love with you—" "Stop," she interrupted. "I won't have you blaming yourself for something beautiful." They rode in silence for a while longer before he spoke again. "They're not entirely wrong, you know. About appearances. About your reputation. I don't care what they think of me. But I care." He reined his horse to a stop, and she did the same. "I care about protecting you, your name, your standing in the community." "Zach, let me finish." His eyes held hers, intense and determined. "I was going to wait until spring really arrived, do this properly with flowers and such. But maybe now is the time after all." Her heart began to race as he dismounted and came to help her down from her horse. When they were standing face to face in the middle of the snowy road, he took both her hands in his. "Cassandra Collins, I love you more than I ever thought possible. You've brought light and purpose back into my life. Will you marry me?" Joy bubbled up within her, but she had to ask, "Are you doing this because of what they said? Because you feel obligated?" "I'm doing it because I can't imagine my life without you," he answered. The timing may have been pushed by their interference, but the intention was always there. "Then yes," she said, smiling through sudden tears. "Yes, I will marry you, Zachary Parker." He gathered her into his arms, kissing her thoroughly until they were both breathless. When they parted, his smile was brighter than she'd ever seen it. "When?" he asked. "Spring? Summer?" She considered, then made a bold decision. "Next Sunday. Let's not wait." His eyebrows rose in surprise. "So soon? Are you sure?" "Completely sure. I don't need a fancy wedding or elaborate preparations. I just need you." And so it was that on the third Sunday in March, 1876, the citizens of Redemption Creek witnessed something few had believed possible when Cassandra Collins first arrived the previous summer. The church was filled to capacity, curiosity drawing even those who rarely attended services. Martha had helped Cassandra remake her green Christmas dress, adding white lace at the collar and cuffs. Wildflowers gathered from a sheltered south-facing slope provided a simple bouquet. Zach wore his best clothes, his copper hair neatly combed, his face clean-shaven, his blue eyes bright with happiness and a touch of disbelief. As the organ played and Cassandra walked alone down the aisle, no father or uncle to give her away, she saw the range of expressions on the townspeople's faces. Some showed genuine happiness, others skepticism, a few outright disapproval. Mrs. Harmon's pinched look suggested she viewed the hasty wedding as confirmation of her suspicions rather than their resolution. None of that mattered when Cassandra reached the altar where Zach waited. He took her hand, just as he had that first time in church during the Christmas social, and something in his steady grip told her everything she needed to know. They belonged together, regardless of what anyone else thought. Pastor Harmon performed the ceremony with proper solemnity. When he reached the familiar question, if anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace, a tense silence filled the church. Cassandra heard someone clear their throat in the back, then Martha's voice cutting through the quiet. "Get on with it, Pastor. These two are meant for each other plain as day." A ripple of laughter broke the tension. Even Mrs. Harmon's lips twitched reluctantly. When it came time for the vows, Zach's voice was steady and sure. "I, Zachary, take you, Cassandra, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." Cassandra repeated the same words, her heart so full she could barely speak them without her voice breaking with emotion. "By the authority vested in me," Pastor Harmon pronounced finally, "I now declare you husband and wife. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." He nodded to Zach. "You may kiss your bride." Zach's kiss was gentle but firm, a promise and a declaration combined. When they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Parker, Cassandra saw something she hadn't expected: acceptance, and in many faces, genuine approval. Martha hosted a small reception at her home afterward, where even the most skeptical townsfolk offered congratulations. Mr. Wilkins raised a toast to Jasper Collins' niece, who proved us all wrong about city girls and ranching, and to the man smart enough to help her do it. Later, as they rode home together, now truly home for both of them, Zach looked at his new wife with wonder. "Happy, Mrs. Parker?" "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she answered truthfully. "How about you, Mr. Parker?" "I keep thinking I'll wake up," he admitted. "That this is all some dream." She reached across to take his hand. "It's real. We're real." That night, as husband and wife, they discovered new dimensions to their love, tenderness, and passion intertwined. The final barriers between them dissolved in shared vulnerability and joy. Spring arrived in earnest, bringing new calves, garden planting, and endless work preparing for the growing season. They worked side by side, equal partners now in every sense. Zach moved his few possessions into the main cabin, and they converted his former dwelling into a bunkhouse for the occasional hired hand. Word spread through the territory about the Eastern lady who had successfully taken over her uncle's ranch, and the decorated Union cavalry veteran who had won her heart. Their story became something of a local legend, how they had defied expectations and found love across the divide of their different backgrounds. By the following Christmas, Cassandra had another secret to share with her husband. As they sat by the fire on Christmas Eve, exchanging gifts much as they had the year before, She placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. What, he began, then understanding dawned in his eyes. Truly, she nodded, happy tears spilling down her cheeks. In summer. Martha confirmed it yesterday. Zach gathered her carefully into his arms, as if she had suddenly become fragile. A baby, he whispered against her hair. Our baby. Are you pleased? She asked, though his joy was evident. Beyond words. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. You've given me everything I never dared hope for, Cassandra. A home, a purpose, your love, and now a family. We've built it together, she corrected gently, just as we'll raise our child together. The following June, as summer spread across the Montana landscape, their daughter was born Elizabeth Martha Parker, named for Cassandra's mother and the woman who had become like a mother to her in this new life. The ranch prospered under their joint care. They added acreage, increased the herd, and built a larger home as their family grew. Eventually, Zach's nightmares faded, replaced by dreams of the future. Cassandra's hands remained work-roughened, her skin tanned by the sun, but she wore these marks with pride, evidence of a life fully lived, challenges faced and overcome. Years passed, and Redemption Creek grew from a small frontier town into a thriving community. The Painted Rock Ranch became known for its quality cattle and the family who ran it, the Eastern lady who had proven everyone wrong, and the quiet cowboy who had taken her hand in church and stood by her side through it all. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the town held a celebration in their honor. As they walked into the church hall where they had once been viewed with suspicion, they were greeted with genuine affection and respect. Their 3 children, Elizabeth, now a poised young woman of 24, and twin boys of 21, stood proudly alongside them. Mrs. Harmon, now white-haired but still formidable, approached them with a rare full smile. I must confess, Mr. and Mrs. Parker, I didn't give your marriage much chance when you stood before the altar that day. I've never been happier to be proven wrong. Thank you, Mrs. Harmon, Cassandra replied graciously, though I suspect you weren't the only one with doubts. No, indeed, the older woman agreed. Many said you would never truly belong here, that the life was too harsh, too different from what you knew. But that young man took your hand in church that Christmas and proved all of us wrong. Later, as they danced together under the paper lanterns strung across the hall, Zach held Cassandra close. 25 years, he marveled. Sometimes it seems like yesterday you stepped off that stagecoach. And sometimes it feels like I've always been here, she replied, resting her head against his shoulder. His hair was streaked with silver now, new lines etched around his eyes, but he was still her Zach, still the man who had taught her to believe in herself and in their life together. Any regrets? He asked, a question he still posed occasionally, as if part of him still couldn't quite believe their happiness. Cassandra lifted her head to meet his gaze, her answer the same as always, but no less true for the repetition, not a single one. As they swayed to the music, surrounded by the community that had finally, fully accepted them, Cassandra reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a lost and lonely young woman stepping fearfully into the unknown, to the confident rancher's wife and mother she had become, it was a transformation neither she nor anyone else could have predicted. But looking into her husband's eyes, seeing the love and pride that had only deepened with the years, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Not despite the hardships and challenges, but because of them, because they had faced them together and emerged stronger for it. The dance ended, and Zach pressed a gentle kiss to her lips, heedless of the onlookers. I love you, Cassandra Parker, he murmured. More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow. And I love you, she replied, her heart as full in that moment as it had been on their wedding day. Always and forever. Hand in hand, they walked among their friends and neighbors, their children, the life they had built together, living proof that sometimes, against all odds and expectations, love truly could conquer all.